Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra,
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people.
associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked.
and sometimes what didn't,
You will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts.
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Before we jump into today's conversation, a special thanks to PM Power Consulting for encouraging and supporting this show right from the start. With over 1,000 person-years of collective experience, PM Power has helped many organizations, teams, and individuals chart out their own journeys of excellence and make progress. Thank you, PM Power. Now, let's move to today's episode. Today, I'm in conversation with Jordan Richards. Jordan is a digital transformation and knowledge management technologist and founder of Tacitus, a knowledge management blueprint and platform designed to help organizations capture, retain, and share critical knowledge at scale. Jordan shares his extensive experience with technology and knowledge management. From his early days with the ZX80 computer to his consulting work with oil companies, Jordan emphasizes the importance of solving real-world problems through technology. He advocates for a people-first, process-second, and technology-third approach, and shares insights on how to ensure successful adoption of IT solutions by understanding the user stories and their daily workflows. Jordan also discusses the critical importance of managing both knowledge and collaboration within organizations, especially with regard to retirees, and touches upon the implications of AI and digital twins in modern business environments. He also shares his personal practices that help him stay grounded and stay continuously updated with the latest trends in technology. Listen on. Hi, Jordan. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Namaste. Good morning and good day to you, Squire.
Namaste. Actually, the first time I heard about you and the kind of conversations we've had, I think it's a very interesting combination of actually applying technology. I mean, we use knowledge to build technology solutions, and then this is going one level deeper about knowledge management. So before we get into all that, we'll start with a self-introduction. Your origin story and how you got into IT and the kind of things that you've been doing, and we'll take it from there.
Well, bizarrely enough, I've been involved with IT since I'm a lot older than I look, I think. I'm 54 in about a month's time. And my first computer, just to get this in there, was a ZX80, which was a computer, original Sinclair, which you had to build yourself, and it never worked out very well. Every time you pressed a few keys, it would break. But from that, me and my teacher built that, and it was 1981, I think it was, or 1982, a long time ago. It's the only thing I've ever been interested in. It's solving problems and building things is where my heart is. And like a magnet, I naturally go to solve problems. And ever since then, it's just what I've been doing. That's trying to look at the real world and use technology as as an enabler rather than something else. Technology is not the goal. It's just an enabler for other things. So since then, I've worked as a software developer, consultant for businesses in the UK, and then spent the rest of my time going around the world working for various oil companies and working with organizations like nuclear and everywhere else to help use technology to help solve their business problems. And I think that's where the critical thing is, that to solve problems. Technology is not for itself. It's not a self-fulfilling thing. And I think people make too many mistakes with that nowadays.
Yeah, wonderful. So when you said solving problems, how do you zero in on what problem to solve?
Well, I think it all comes down to the user story. When you talk to people, it's like the same concept about adoption. People say adoption of IT is very difficult. I think if you're solving people's problems, adoption is not difficult. If you're trying to force them on training sessions, then it's difficult. But if you're sit with the person, interview the person, walk through their day. One of the things I thought kind of interesting from oil and gas perspective was that people used to do a day in the life where you'd actually go out and do different people's jobs. And that really opens up your eyes to what actually happens and how things are done and what problems they've got. And if you can solve their problems, then their adoption is so much better. If you see the fact that they have to go and fill in a form every time that they come into the building, but it's basically the same field, or if the information management people decide, I've got some friends in various space agencies, and the information management people have requested that there's probably 50 pieces of metadata. But that's very all well and good for the first 10 days. But once everyone's not watching, everyone just uses the defaults, which means long term people can't find what they want. And it is all defaults. And then we get in a further problem, we can't find the information. So that's where I'm coming from on that. I'm actually understanding. This is where I've gone from pure technologist, pure techie developer, all the way up to now I'm all about people and how people interact and the strategy behind how people react. I think it's people first, process, and then technology. And if you can solve that and look at it from that lens, it changes everything.
And also, when you said you started with the Sinclair,
Yeah.
it was probably more for a hobby, or I remember those machines. So I was probably a little older than you are. Then,
It
yeah.
was, but I actually had a few friend of mine who had a business and they wanted to keep track of stock.
Mhm.
And it was a bit beyond me at the time. But I said I could do it, and I ended up having to learn how to write an assembler to fix the problem. I remember writing an assembler, and I think it was White Lightning was the actual compiler. And to keep something to keep track of their stock on, they had a Spectrum. They knew computers were supposed to help them. And I ended up somehow working with that and roping into that, where I'd actually wrote something in assembler, and I learned as I went along. I punched well above my weight on that. So it was, I think that's what triggered me about, wow, I can help people solve problems. And yeah, from then onwards, it just kept going.
Yeah. So when you're developing a solution in IT, now sometimes it is, like you said, identify a particular role, the day in the life, try to address some of the pain points. But when it comes to deploying something or developing something for an organization, then there would be multiple roles involved, multiple maybe workflows and all the approvals, hierarchies, authorities, and so on. So how do you evolve into all those things? Do you get everything up front, or is it something that you can build piece by piece and then everything will kind of fall into place?
In my experience, big wins never win. They go on forever and they never deliver. I like steps. You walk one step at a time. And so I always like to have a strategy before I talk to anyone, like a 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And I have an idea of what's worked in the past because you go from the known to the unknown. So I have an operating model inside my head and written down, which is this is what's worked in the past. Now let me investigate and discover what the organization has got and how we can match what they've got and change my operating model or the operating model or blueprint, whatever you want to call it, to fit that. And there's no big change. It's a little step, little wins that make people feel like they're winning rather than a problem. So I have a map or a blueprint or an operating model of this is how information or data or processes or the entire architecture of IT in that organization all fits together. For instance, to give you an example, if someone's going to join an organization, then they have to recruit. And when you recruit, you've got to look at, well, I've got this particular role. It might be a social justice or IT support, and they have certain capabilities that are required for that role. Right. So when they recruit for someone, they must have a recruitment system. Even if it's on paper, they must have a way what they need that person to have set against the CVs they've got. And what I found is that they create this role, they create the capabilities and what they need for this role, but it doesn't filter through the system. So when someone actually joins the organization, that HR system that's actually said this person needs to have C# or database skills or MongoDB or whatever, it somehow is lost and then they start again. And so you look at the knowledge flows and the information flows from the system. There's not an organic viewpoint of all this. There's not, well, where is your central truth? Whereas you might call it this, but other people call it this. So I looked at it in that sort of way of, let's take a step back and let's look at how everything comes together. Because from the experience I've got, it doesn't flow through. There's gaps, there's silos. Even on teams, there's silos. And what we're trying to do is reduce those silos so there is a central truth. Just so there's a coherent experience. There's never going to be one system that fits everything. But from a user perspective, they just want to go to one place, which is kind of interesting if you remember SharePoint, where people used to use and still do use SharePoint as a digital dashboard. I was actually at the launch of SharePoint by accident. And the idea from SharePoint Team Services, the idea of having a central place where teams could go, branched out into the point where organizations were using it as a landing page, and there'd be a link to SAP, there'd be a link to the Great Plains, there'd be a link to the different systems, and it was a central coherent experience for users, regardless of what's in the background.
Yeah. So when you go study a particular requirement or an organization, and you said you look at the people, process, and then technology, and looking at all the data and the mental models, have there been instances where either initial inferences have proved wrong as you start developing or as you start deploying?
Absolutely. And has there been, there is always. For instance, in some environments, people just keep buying out systems. They just keep adding more IT to fix a problem that might not be an IT problem. They might have another system. Oh, we need a system just for recruitment that doesn't talk to everything else. And there is always going to be resistance to changing that. If someone's already invested time and effort into a system, then they might not want to change or want to hear a different story around what solves the problem. There's always going to be a resistance. And when you go to an organization, I'm very hyper aware that some people have vested interest in what they've already got, and they don't want to be told what they've done for the last 3 years is not suitable. So I always see that as I'm not a competitor to them. I'm trying to enable them. I'm trying to say, okay, we've got this silo. How can we integrate it and make it better so it's more successful for you? Because them silos do exist. There is no, even if you say, well, we're only Microsoft stack, we're only Google stack, and these happen. The Malaysian government, there's parts that I've talked to, they don't use the Microsoft stack, they use the Google stack. So it depends on where you are, and there's always, well, what should we do with that? And you've got to be really aware of that. But I think at the end of the day, if you focus on what the user wants rather than some tribalness around which technology you've got, whether it's you've got .NET applications, you've got PHP applications, you've got SAP. For instance, like there's SAP Jam, there's Yammer, or was Yammer, Viva, and there's all these different competing technologies, and they change so quickly. I think you've got to be agnostic and just focus on what they use, what is the critical, what is the mission, what is the objective of what you're trying to do. And that objective is probably not technical. It's probably based upon people process first.
Yeah. So when you say people, recently I was talking to somebody who provides enterprise solutions for program project management and so on.
Yeah.
So they were very clear that their target segment are the leaders and the managers and others, and not necessarily the team members.
Yeah.
But then any enterprise system, when you said the people need to be actually using it, and how do you address the different segments of personas, so to say, even within an organization?
Well, what I like to do is build up different personas, and this ties into an interesting concept. So, if you've got the idea of the CEO's perception of what they think they're going to get and what they want, as you said, quite completely different from the project managers. The CEO's perception is, I just want to go to one place and see all the dashboards and KPIs, and it shouldn't be so complicated. And then the IT manager or the program manager or the project managers, they've all got their little silos. And I don't think they're both wrong. I think they're both right. So you just got to create different personas and say, this is this person, this is what they're expecting, this is what their aspirations are for the system. And then somehow map this together and say, okay, this is what they are. No, it doesn't. I don't think they're competing. They can be both right. For instance, one person, the CEO might say, I just want a single place to find everything. Now, from an IT background, that's probably not going to happen. It's very aspirational, but really there's so many different things and competing things there. But from his perception, it just goes to one place. But we can be pulling the data from everywhere else. And the same from the different siloed parts of IT, whether it's project management, whether it's development, whether it's support, whether it's operations, whether it's infrastructure. They've got their own requirements. And I think it's a way of looking at this as a big mind map of saying, okay, well, really, we've all got one goal to make the organization more successful. So I always start with the personas of the different people, and this is part of stakeholder management. And the stakeholders doesn't have to be the top level stakeholders; it could be all the way down. And that's why I think you've got to get into the trenches and understand what is their problem as well, and then build this up. So this is a big blueprint or operating model of everyone's viewpoint, and somehow start matching them together and say, well, actually, this is what they want, this is their persona, this is their day in their life, and mapping the day in their life of what they want, and then you're getting a better overview. And I think that's a nice way to give some sort of success, because they feel happier.
Also, when we talk about enterprise says leveraging IT, one is about keeping the lights on or the systems of record and all these in the day in the life of and what they want, etc. Would reflect more of probably the past of what they have done or what is expected, maybe regulatory and other constraints that they have. But today, everyone needs to also be prepared for the future. Okay. So how do you get those unstated requirements or the possibilities that they could harness from IT?
That leads into another conversation, another point that, for instance, if you look at nuclear decommissioning, people built power stations 40, 50, 60 years ago, and they just record, all the documents just record as a record. We chose an aluminium pipe 50 years ago. This is the thickness of the pipe. This is the pipe. No one's recording the intent. No one's recording the conversation or collaboration to get to the point where they've got an aluminium pipe. And 50 years later, when they come to decommissioning the nuclear power station, the question is, why did they have a aluminium? That's bad. And no, so I think part of the documentation and part of the process is actually recording the conversations and the intent. Now, the reason why that leads on to the question about innovation is if you want to make a cake and you've got flour, egg, milk, and chocolate, whichever one you put in first, your cake's still going to taste like chocolate. It might be good, it might be bad, but it's still going to taste like chocolate. So with the same thing, for you to actually change and have innovation, you've got to have that variance. You've got to have other ingredients. Otherwise, it's just going to taste the same. And I think when that comes into innovation, you've got to have the intent recorded, because otherwise all AI is going to do is regurgitate the garbage that's already in there. You've got to make some sort of quality input. And I see knowledge management and collaboration and institutional intelligence, including the intent, as a way of actually putting quality information inside engines like AI engines, so you get better quality input. To give you an example of that, people are going to start talking about digital twins. And what is a digital twin? But if you say, well, let's just put a chatbot on the top of our existing documents, there's my digital twin. Now, is that really a digital twin? Is that just a chatbot? If you go deep dive into this technology, you say, okay, wait a second. I'm Jordan. I'm a project manager. Now go and look at every time I've added text to a document or done a document. Look at every time I've had a communication and a collaboration and a conversation in a community of practice or in a discussion forum or anywhere that's publicly available, and then build up a persona around that person. So only answer with the knowledge that I have given, only answer with the documents that I have given. So it's an authoritative viewpoint that's based around what it knows as my persona. Therefore, the hallucination is going to be less. Therefore, you can say, well, when I search for a document, If I had, for instance, a space agency or whatever, and I had millions of documents, if I know my viewpoint, then feed that into the search engine and only give me documents in the results that are tailored to me. Otherwise, it's just going to do the best bets. And if you've got 1 million documents, 10 million documents, or 10 million files, it's just going to give what it gives to everyone else. But if you've got the idea of a digital twin that's based around you, it's not just a chat box. It's the idea that I want to personalize your experience to make you more operationally efficient. Therefore, for instance, digital twin could work with the idea of search. For instance, I know that you're a HSC advisor. This is the things that you're interested in. This is your conversations. On a daily basis, build up the idea of a profile around what you do, and then use that to tailor make your interface and your experience with the computer systems, therefore giving quality content back to you, therefore helping you to be more efficient and more innovative. It's a deep subject. Sorry, I'm very interested in the idea of digital twin and making it more than just hype, the new shiny thing, the same as quantum computing and everything else. I don't like new shiny things. I like practicality and pragmatic answers.
Yeah, wonderful. So two specific things that you mentioned, pretty much in the same breath, is
Yeah.
knowledge management and AI.
Yeah.
So how did you get attracted to or start doing something related to knowledge management, and then we'll take up AI.
Okay, so knowledge management is when I first started working in oil and gas, I worked in Italy, then I went to Kazakhstan. And because I run all the development teams and information management teams, the idea was that they've come across this new idea of knowledge management, which is really managing the knowledge in an organization. Like I mentioned about the idea of the aluminium pipe, why was it there? There's no good having just the document. You've got to have the conversation, collaboration, and intent. And so there is a scientific answer to this, which is knowledge management. And there is ways to do this better so that the knowledge exists inside the corporation. And I've been the person who's been responsible for making it happen. Not just once, not just twice, 3, 4 times. I've had to build this for a big national level organization and say, okay, we've got the academic viewpoint, but this is the technological stack that we've got. How can we do something that helps fulfill the mission objectives? And from every time I've built over time, every 4 different oil companies, I've come up with what I see as the minimum building blocks that we can actually add some value. To give an example, if me and you were only talking on email, no one else can have value from our email. If you're asking me a question like, Jordan, how can AI make a difference to knowledge management? If we're talking email, no one else can learn from our conversation. Yes, there is a place for email, but on a collaborative sense, no one can make value from it. But if we're sharing it in a mechanism that other people can search for AI KM, and they can find it in a shared area that they can actually ask questions about this and say, oh, Shiva's asked this question about this, or Jordan's asked this question, then it makes the organization better. So I can really, really see the value of knowledge management across organizations from medium to massive to national level. And from that, for oil companies, I've seemed to have changed my viewpoint from being a pure technologist to seeing the beauty and value of people. And if you would have asked me this question 20 years ago, I would have said technology can solve everything. Now I feel that I find the value in people, for instance, retirees. This is something that I'm very passionate about, that the idea there's a lot of organizations, you've got the subject matter expert, you might be the director of oil north, you might be the director of finance. And suddenly he gets to retirement age and everyone's going bye-bye. But this person is a subject matter expert. Surely there's got to be a better way to engage workforce leavers so they can mentor the next generation. And that should have rewards to the organization. For instance, when you start a new organization, the reality is it's going to take 2 months to onboard. Let's say 3 months reality. You're going to get there. They're going to take you to get a laptop. You've got to learn the process. You've got to learn the ropes. If there's a way where the people who want to collaborate, who are retirees or subject matter experts, right now there's not a mechanism. And I think that's a national tragedy, that there's got to be a better way to engage with retirees, because this idea of, oh, by the way, you're 60, bye-bye, I don't think that works. And I find that's really, really affecting the nuclear industry, because a lot of people in the nuclear industry, no one's really built a power station for 35 years. A lot of people who are experienced are leaving, and they don't have the mechanism to engage with them. It doesn't, oh, they can't be employed because they're retired. Well, really, we should do something at a national level and engage with them. So I've seen all these value of KM gone further and further down the path. I've been at the KM Mike Awards as a panelist and a speaker, and I just feel very passionate. You can see my passion is leaking out of me. So yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're touching upon a very important aspect of this tacit knowledge, I assume.
Yeah.
So how do you get people to share? Even when you go to communities, even on all these, the current social media, the influencer model, the number of people who share or who are the quote unquote influencers versus the number of followers,
Yeah.
There is a huge difference in terms of the numbers or percentages or whichever way you measure. So how do you get people to share?
There's two thoughts behind that. One of them is, and I'm going to have to give you another little story. One of them, I got a
This is
friend of
all about
mine.
stories, yeah.
It's all about stories. One of them, I got a friend of mine who was he used to be the vice president of a very well-known bank, and he actually asked me, what is this KM? What is this sharing? I don't get it. What is it? And I said to him, he said, you've got 60 seconds to answer this question. And we were eating dinner. And I felt under pressure. I wasn't prepared for this. I was eating dinner. And he said, you've got 60 seconds. His belief is that if you can't describe it in 60 seconds, you don't know it. And my answer was, so if you were the vice president of this bank, and all the managing director committee of this bank happened to have a plane accident and sadly were no longer available, then would that affect the business? And his answer was, it'd be absolutely catastrophic. And I said, there's an answer to that to make the business more robust and reduce the risk. And that's what knowledge management is. And he was like, absolutely excellent. So there's the value. And then you've got the idea of how do you get people to actually import? You can demonstrate the value, but how do you get people to have the input? And I think the first stage of that is, I don't like the idea of blanket giving everyone access, because then it will die. You need to find the people who need to solve a problem. Like, for instance, if you're looking at charities, fundraising is always a problem. Fundraising, not just the fundraising, where do you go to get fundraising, but how do you raise the awareness? How do you fill in some of these tenders and donation things? Very, very difficult. But if you got the individuals and say, this is my skill, and start matching people together, they start seeing value, and then they start adding and helping each other. And it's almost like a plant growing that you can see, oh, we've got 20 people, now we've got 30 people, and it starts going beyond the borders. And then you can start adding other parts of the organization. As I said before, I don't like big wins, and finding a particular pain point of that organization, whether it's HSE audits, whether it's fundraising, and then getting the subject matter experts to feel appreciated for their knowledge. Because I think also it's appreciation. If you're a subject matter expert, or you're an expert in this particular area, you should feel appreciated for that. And that, whether that could be gamification or something else, but just the fact is people appreciate your knowledge. And I think that makes a difference, rather than just typing in a frequently asked question and say, this is, no, I like the collaborative aspect. But there is always going to be people who don't want to collaborate. For instance, there is always going to be people who don't want to go on video. There's always going to be people who just want to read and not say anything. And that's fine. That's humanity. But as long as that information is slowly growing, I find over time, then you get them to add a little question themselves, and it starts growing, because then they realize they can say something without being criticized. Because did you know, this is another interesting thing, do you know the second biggest fear in the world is dying? But the first biggest fear in the world is public speaking.
Oh, wow.
Public speaking, people are more scared of public speaking than they are of dying. And it's the same with sharing knowledge, that people don't want to ask a question because I'm supposed to be doing this job. I'm supposed to be the fundraiser. Dare I ask a question about fundraising? And I think that we've got to change our mindset that asking questions is not a negative. Some people, if you go on some of the old coding sites, you can find like Elon Musk's questions about PHP and stuff, and I think that's kind of interesting because no, but don't be afraid to ask questions because it shows the growth. You know, I asked you some questions about organizations and stuff. I'm willing to learn, and if you're not willing to learn, you're not willing to grow.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the other side. The
Mm.
on the contribution side, yes, definitely, recognitions, acknowledgement by peers, and all that works. But in the instance of these retirees that you mentioned, they may no longer be part of the system after they've shared.
Mm.
Uh, so, are there any good practices that you suggest to keep them to be engaged or involved on a continuing basis?
I am working my way through this because it's a passionate project. I've actually did my dissertation on the actual subject, and you're a prime example of why your experience and knowledge. I tip my hat to you. And different, what it is what I find quite interesting is the focus is different in different cultures and different countries. In some cultures, it's not about the money; it's about the appreciation.
Hmm.
In some cultures, like in Europe, pensioners are really struggling for money. So there's different focuses why, and there's always going to be a potential people who just don't look. I've retired. I want to grow my flowers and grow my vegetables. I'm not interested anymore. But there are always going to be people who do want to feel like I was the head of this and I want to still contribute. And I feel entrepreneurially lonely without that connection because I feel that I'm an ENTJ and I feel I need to connect with people. It's just the way I am. And so with the pensioners, I think that there is no mechanism, but I think we've got to start looking at ways to build that up. And that ties into something on a national level. It's not just the organization. You can scale this up. For instance, we all know that COVID happened a few years ago, and I am from a town in England called Mansfield, and Mansfield's got little local government. And when COVID happened, they had to find people who got respiratory diseases, but they don't talk to the next local government. So there's no sharing of information or sharing of expertise. And in Nottingham, there's like 33 of these little local governments that make up Nottinghamshire, and they don't share in each other. And Nottingham doesn't share to Derby, and there are all the other areas inside England don't share. Then England doesn't share with Scotland or Wales. And what you find is there's no pathway to all these experts. And I think that if we look at this on a national level and say, wait a second, let's build up a repository of expertise on one subject. It could be HSE, it could be water purity, it could be anything. And say, okay, this is on a national level. Now, how do we, 30% of all our people who've got experience have just retired. We've got to build up a mechanism where they can contribute. They're rewarded for their contribution in whichever mechanism there is. And I think that will make a difference to humanity. I really do, because I see too many retirees just there's something I don't feel happy about it myself. I'm getting older and I've got a lot to give, and I think people have got a lot to give, and we should respect that knowledge. And how do we do that? I don't know, but I'm trying to work my way through it. But there's something there about how, if we had a community of practice, for instance, if we picked respiratory diseases and we say, okay, we've got all the people inside the government there on this particular geographical area, but we've also got the people who've retired, but they're not allowed to come into that walled garden. So let's create somewhere in the middle, a hybrid community of practice where the retirees can still answer questions. And if someone asks a question on about respiratory diseases or water purity or air filters or something like this person is the person that knows, and then get a notification saying, by the way, Bob has asked a question about water purity. You're the subject matter expert on water purity. There's a notification. And they can choose to go in and answer that question, steering the conversation. So it's like an holistic approach to knowledge. And I think on a national level, that's going to make a difference.
Oh, good. Yeah, that triggers another question. Before I get to that, yeah, so far we talked about the contribution part. Now, how do you
Yeah,
encourage people to share and all that?
yeah.
Uh, what are some things from your experience that have worked to encourage or improve the consumption part?
So training courses is one thing, but I think engaging with people I know it's not very scalable, but even getting them onto a video call makes a difference. Sending PDFs and read this, I think that doesn't make a difference. So there's two ways to look at this, and it depends on your management and leadership style. One way is to try and encourage them and have a cause where they see that and they feel the influence and they feel they can contribute and their contribution is valid and valued. And the other way is, if it's an organization, you should make it part of their policy. For instance, there's a quality issue here, but if you say, okay, we want to improve from continuous improvement, therefore we want every single employee to put at least 2 suggestions per year where they can improve and make it part of their employee contract. Now then, there is always going to be people who just put not so good quality, but I think that's about 20-30%, but really you're still getting 70% of quality because it's part of what they do for their living. So it depends on your management style. Why not both? Why not say that in their performance contract, if they want to get a review, they've got to submit so many lessons learned or best practices or continuous improvements. And the same, we're actually engaging with people, not just with a PDF, because people nowadays will just upload the PDF to a language model and say, summarize this. That's how people work. So the human engagement where they're on a camera and they can actually see people and talk and have these conversations where they're not scared to talk. That's the thing. Again, it's back to the idea that people are actually frightened to talk. So, yeah.
That's an interesting point that people, when you say that they use the LLMs to summarize,
Yep.
it seems to be that everybody wants instant answers or instant solutions. But then in the traditional knowledge management paradigm, we talk about the data, information, knowledge, and then wisdom.
Yes.
So how do you think this is influencing or impacting the innate human wisdom?
I think that people are too willing to accept what AI says is correct. And I think there's going to be a throwback to that. Right now, from a scientific method, if I have a scientific method and say, I put sodium into water and this is what happens over 24 hours, you can prove it. Right now, if you put a query into a language model, it'll hallucinate and it'll get, each time you won't get the same answer. And I think people are so ready to jump forwards that they're not taking stock of where they are. So AI will hallucinate, and people I've just done an infographic about this, that the fact is you've got to be a bit more cautious. Don't see AI as your shortcut, it's your advisor. I think people are taking too many shortcuts with AI to, oh, I don't need to do the work, I don't need to do the research, I don't need to check, and then just posting this. I see it on LinkedIn, to be honest, where a lot of people now just posting that I can spot, and you can probably spot a mile away, that there's less thought. Now, yeah, we're all going to use AI. I'm not criticizing that I use AI, but I see it as a research assistant or a team member. And with a team member, I would still criticize and check. And it's the same, that I think that we've got to realize that it's not the only answer, and it can be the wrong answer. Oh, by the way, is this mushroom safe? Yes, this mushroom safe. Straight to hospital. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Yes, you're right. It's not safe. Right now we're in a zone where we're too trusting of technology, and really we've got to have a healthy distrust, just the same as the social media. I've got young children, and I worry about the fact is that they trust what they see on videos because they think it's true, and that there's got to be a way to validate and say that person is real and their knowledge is valid. And again, how do we validate that someone's a subject matter expert? How do we is that a rating scale by other people? Is there something got to be done about tokenization of knowledge? I don't know, but I think that from an AI point of view, we are too trusting. And what that means is that people are taking shortcuts. And if you were a younger person nowadays, you'd probably just take the shortcuts and not learn to code from beginning to end. And then you're not going to know how to fix the problems. You've got to go for the journeyman to fix the problems, to start from scratch. And that's what I think that is a danger that people are now just going to vibe code their way to applications but not understand how the actual applications work. When it goes wrong, they don't know what to do. And I can give you an example where I've seen this happen. I've got a uncanny ability to spot trends or technological trends. We're talking about AI, and I was writing about AI in 2018. As you know, there's articles that I wrote about AI in 2018. I also wrote about cryptocurrency, blockchains, and now I'm writing about quantum computing. So I've got a organic pattern sniffing thing about spotting trends. And with that, with the AI, I was talking about low code, no code, which is what people now are calling vibe coding. The idea that power users don't need developers. We just, oh, I want this, and it's drag and drop and stuff like this. And I've seen this actually happen, that it's all well and good to do that as power users, but there's got to be governance involved. There's got to be, so if you, this is a real scenario, I'm not going to mention where a person came into this big organization, they didn't like IT. IT is too slow, there's too much process, there's too much project management. I can do it myself by downloading this. And this person he was connected to the management, and he did it his way, just like the song, I Did It My Way. Sadly, that person was only there a few months and then moved off to another new shiny job elsewhere. And the system that he had which was to do with HSE, he left.
Oh,
And the system was actually connecting using back-end databases and passwords to the back-end to secure stuff that he shouldn't be. And no one could support the system because no one knew how it worked. And when he left, people said, "We stopped working. This is critical. This is mission critical." Like, it's never been a handover. And it was, you cannot take someone else's system, support it that it's no longer working without actually understanding it. And I think the governance is very key when it comes to vibe coding. There's still got to be that human in the loop, and there's still got to be that governance in control, because you can't support something you don't know what's gone on there. It's going to take you ages to understand and realize, oh my gosh, they're using a back-end SA password to get to the data. Oh no, how did that get allowed? So I think that the governance is very interesting. And I also think, from a concept is human in the loop. That's another tie into the AI question. If I ask you, do you know when the first autonomous vehicle was? Boat, plane, car, whatever. When was the first time we had a vehicle that could point itself towards a point? Have a guess. The first autonomous vehicle of any kind. Have a guess. And no checking the internet.
yeah. Was it these floor mopping robots?
No, keep going back. Give me a year. Give me a year. Just a year.
Yeah.
Think of autopilot on a plane or a car, or when do you think the first one was invented?
Maybe in the 70s.
Keep going back.
Well, 50s.
Keep going back.
Okay, then 1878.
1911.
Oh, okay.
115 years ago, they put a gyroscope and a map onto a boat, and it was an autonomous vehicle. But yet, nowadays, when you get on a plane, and a plane does have autopilot, it can fly, but you still need a pilot. Still need a human in the loop.
Yeah.
Why? Well, surely, if we can, why? Because of accountability, responsibility. If that plane crashes because it's hallucinated, or because if there's any form of accountability, responsibility, or risk, you've really got to have some sort of human in the loop to take control of that. It's no good trying to sue ChatGPT because a plane's crashed. Yeah. This is why I think that human in the loop is going to be the growth area of understanding the problems. Yes, we might see a sea change where we're not having as many developers. That's happening. Okay, I know yesterday that Amazon announced that they're going to get rid of 16,000 AWS people. But I think that on the other scale, there's going to be more roles that are understanding the business. I don't know what you can call them, business process automation managers or whatever, using agents or whatever, the title change over. But to tie into that, there's a poster from 1905 in America, and I could find the poster for you. And it's people in uproar about this crazy new technology, 1905, called electricity, that's going to put everyone out of a job. And yet there's more jobs. So I don't see AI as as a negative. If I seem negative, I'm just trying to be very balanced and realistic and pragmatic. And in 1905, there's a poster in America where like, we want to complain about this electricity thing that's going to put people out of a job. And yet there's more jobs. And I think it's the jobs have changed,
Yeah.
but it's the same with AI. Yes, we're going to probably have less developers, but they're just going to move into business understanding and agents and stuff like this. It's the roles all change, the title, but they have changed. You know, and I know there's COBOL programmers and punch cards and stuff like this. Things do change. We just got to accept that change. The only constant in life is change.
So that is a good segue to ask my next question, which is with so many things changing, and you said you had this innate ability of spotting trends and so on. How do you stay up to date? How do you find the time to stay up to date, probably?
I realized I like learning. I read a lot, and I see it like if you're in a boat and the boat's sinking and the boat's got water in it and it's sinking, you've got to keep bailing the water out, otherwise you're going to sink. And I think the same to me. Learning, I'm I never stop reading, I never stop learning, and there's a few things I do as my daily routine, and it's not something I do extra. It's not a hobby. It's part of my individual DNA makeup that I have accepted that I don't want to stop learning. And so it's no longer I've done it as a habit. There's a thing about atomic habits that I automatically try and learn stuff. And if I don't understand it, I make my way to find, okay, how can I understand it? Let's imagine this is, instead of being difficult, let's imagine it was easy and I really enjoyed it. How could I do that? So I just make a constant push towards learning. And this is interesting. I'm really into fitness. I'm 53, nearly 54, but I still go to the gym 5 days a week and I still do boxing. And I don't like cardio. I don't like running. I don't like cardio. I like weights. And what I realized years and years ago was that the reason why I didn't like cardio was because I spent 30 minutes staring at the clock, 29 minutes, and then I try and look away and it'd still only be 10 seconds. So what I started to do was listen to courses, audiobooks. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. When I'm doing something else, I've always got an audiobook playing. And I find that I would suggest that to everyone. Get some audiobooks, listen to them, and just have them play in the background, because there is quicker ways to learn. I always have audiobooks. I love audiobooks. And I've always got an audiobook playing where I'm digesting something. Right. And there's two ways. There's a nice little way to learn stuff. And one way is you read it really, really fast. As fast as, if you're going to read a book, read it really fast, or listen to the book really, really fast, as fast as you can actually digest it. Then listen to it again on normal speed, and you'll find that you'll retain the knowledge a lot better. Also, write down notes. You might not need the notes, but the fact is that you're actually writing them down with your hand makes a difference. And my desk right now is full of notes. I'm probably never going to read the notes, but there's some scientific evidence that actually the physicality of writing stuff down helps you remember better. So this is where I go with that. And I just constantly looking and trying to see. I'm excited about the future. I'm very positive about the future. I don't think we're all going to go to doom and gloom, because I do believe in the goodness of humanity. Whether I'm wrong or not, I don't know, but I do. I see goodness in people. There is always going to be bad people, but I see goodness in people, and I think technology can help that. When you think about it, the world's actually statistically a safer, better place than it was 100 years ago, 500 years ago. My gosh. If you've got a toothache, you're probably not going to be very well. You're not going to make it if you've got toothache. If you've got a cold, forget it. Nowadays, we are surviving a lot better, and that has an impact. So I think when you look at that, yes, it's going to make a difference. Probably we are going to have a smaller population, and we are going to have abundance of resources. Because if you look at the abundance of resources, you look at the idea that if energy is slowly becoming free, because we're using the power of the sun and we're using the power of the wind and atomic energy, and energy is free, which energy is the new currency. And then we say, okay, if energy is free and we've got robots to go and look at every single tomato and say, oh, that needs 1 milligram more potassium. So entire areas could be used for farming. We've got abundant energy. We've got abundant food because people are growing that, but we've got a shrinking population. I think for that population, they're going to have a lot better life. Medicals are going to get better. Rather than have one surgeon that can only do 4 operations a day, the way surgery is going with robots is it can watch that surgeon, learn from it, and do it a lot more finer than a human surgeon can. So I think overall, I feel very positive about the future, and I'm just diving my way into it, thinking, that's going to be interesting, like currencies and stuff like this, or medical advances. It's going to make a difference, like cooking. It's not going to be very long before we've all got a robot at home. Yeah, first it'll be millionaires. Then it'll get to the point where everyone has got a robot at home. And when you want to download Jamie Oliver's cookbook, you want to, I really want a Jamie Oliver's sandwich. You'll download the Jamie, and it'll do it just like Jamie Oliver. And we'll have more time to do what we want. Yes, are we going to end up with a universal income? Probably. That's an extra conversation, but yeah, I'm always learning. Sorry, I'm always learning.
These are definitely wonderful and positive thoughts to kind of come to the close of our conversation in terms of time. But I still have one question, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
So many things happening. We're seeing all the changes, and while it is looking very positive for the future and all that, are there any personal practices that help you stay grounded?
I think funnily enough, I actually have my principles written down, and this is where I come from on this. That yes, I try to stay very grounded on this. And what I do is I used to have a little piece of paper in my wallet of what I think I want other people to see me as. My version of me. What am my daughter? I want my daughter, when my daughter thinks of her daddy, what sort of person is a daddy? So I have my principles written down. And I do share this with everyone because I think it's important that write your principles, who you think you are, down, because you're never going to be perfect, but it keeps you tapped into the right direction. And I've got my principles on my phone here. And I used to have it on a piece of paper. Now it's on my phone. And one of them, this is how I keep grounded. One of them is, if you think positive thought about someone, tell them. And you've probably noticed when I think positive about someone, I might have not spoken to that person for 5 years. And suddenly I'll send a message saying, by the way, Luca, I just want to say you were a wonderful manager. I never got a chance to tell you this, but I do appreciate all the things you did for me. Out of the blue. Because if I think positive, I want to tell that person. And another one is about appreciation, is try and find something about everyone you admire or like. I don't care who it is, whatever role they are. Find some, maybe they've got nice shiny shoes every day. And you've noticed, like, that person's, I don't get on so well with that person, but I've noticed that person's, their shoes are very shiny. They look after it. They take pride in their personal appearance. So I think that's always appreciate people. One of them is, if you always do what you say, if you say, I'm going to do this, try your hard. Sometimes it's not possible, but always try to do what you say. Always share your knowledge, which I think is very important. As you notice, I'm always sharing my ideas and stuff like this. And encourage everyone, no exceptions. Always encourage people to do better. Always, have you tried this? Give them ideas. It's just a viewpoint, but always encourage people. And appreciate people even for the little things. I always try and appreciate people, no matter who they are. I want to appreciate, even from the security all the way up to the CEO, you appreciate for what they do, because each person's living their own day. Yeah. Greet everyone with a smile. I've nearly done. Sorry. Be a good person. Be predisposed to action. So don't, I need to buy this, I need to do this. No, do it now. Do it now. And then learn something new every day, which is going back to what you said, and it's on my phone. So I try and learn something new every day. Every day I'm trying to learn something. So that is my principles of living, and that helps me remain grounded. I just see myself as a simple person trying to make the world a better place. What is a man who does not try to make the world a better place?
Wonderful, Jordan. I think it will take some time for all these principles to sink in, but they do appear simple that one can definitely practice them. So thanks a lot for sharing perspectives and your story.
Thank you for your time. I'm always willing to help, and I'm always willing to talk to anyone.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.